Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tech Champions. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty, CTO with AuditMax in Jacksonville, Florida. As you know, we take time each week to sit down with thought leaders and industry experts in the field of technology. We love to learn about their journey and their mission and get their take on the latest trends in the industry. We always have amazing guests on the show. Today is no exception. Joining us from Atlanta, Georgia is Lee Alcorn. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So happy to have you on, Lee. Excited to have you. So I know you're the Vice President of Technology at Apisero, and I know you've held a lot of different positions over your career, though, from FIS to Auto Trader and beyond that. So maybe we can start with just letting you talk for a couple minutes about your journey and your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey began as early as my earliest memories, I have to admit. So always been passionate about technology, going back to the arcade era and then the exposure to home entertainment like Pong and Atari 2600. Got my first exposure 8 years old to programming with the Commodore 64. So my early life was already kind of heading this direction. I had the great fortune of joining a company back in the 90s where I started software engineering. So I was an object-oriented programmer, object-oriented designer, using C, C++ over those years, integrated with all kinds of different systems. Built one of the first payment processing services in our country back in the 90s for a company back then called Link2Gov, which is now part of FIS. From that point, held different positions like director level, senior software engineer, architect. Fast forward a bit, most recently Cox Automotive, which is was basically a growth company through acquisition, comprised of about 30 tech companies like Autotrader.com, like you mentioned, DealerTrack, Kelley Blue Book, and so on. And that's where I first started seeing what we're going to probably touch on later, which is kind of the need for transformation, digital transformation in this fourth industrial revolution, where we had to figure out how to bring our organization, our enterprise together. And we did that using MuleSoft. Joined MuleSoft proper. There, I was a strategic advisor director and part of the office of CTO there for about 4.5 years, and recently joined Apisero as VP of Technology.
All right. Yeah, that's great. That sounds like a interesting journey, Lee. It's a long pretty early on there. Yeah, we had a Pong setup as a kid. So and I've bought many cars out of the Auto Trader back in the day, but it was pre-digital. You'd flip through the magazine, and that's some fun memories there. So let's talk a little bit about 2020. It's been a crazy year, really. I mean, pretty insane, like something out of a fiction novel almost. So, but I know you have some interesting thoughts I'd love for you to share with our audience. Want to have you talk about what are some of the impacts on the businesses around the country, around the globe, and then maybe a couple minutes on how can a business not just survive but actually thrive in this economy. I think that's a great designation because a lot of folks are looking to just keep the lights on, but how can we move past that and actually thrive in this economy?
Yeah, first, I think we all acknowledge this is unprecedented, right? This year is unlike anything we've ever experienced. So we've gone through different challenges, through the decades, but this was especially difficult for a lot of organizations, regardless of industry, regardless of size. And I think the impact of which we still won't fully really understand, probably for the foreseeable future. It might take another year plus to really understand what the full impact was. The first thing that I realized we had to do when we start working with customers or even internally is have empathy. So whether it's a rental car company, it's oil and gas, having empathy for that organization, that industry, and the challenges they're facing. And looking for any kind of opportunities, take the rental car industry, and I have some great deal of experience working with one of the premier ones and trying to reinvigorate, rebuild. In some sense, you have to really almost start from scratch. So that's the extreme, right? It's a industry that's been around for decades, now faced with challenges that we've never seen before, and so now you have to almost reimagine what that business model or models looks like, and how do we operate in this new era. There's certain industries that just may never quite recover. On the flip side, there will be new industries that will be emboldened or enriched. Look at remoting capabilities and companies that provide those capabilities. Different organizations like companies like MuleSoft MuleSoft is something I've been focused on the last, I guess, 8 years at this point. So it's an iPaaS. It's a unified platform to bring systems together, and it's the industry leader across the board. And I think MuleSoft has been fundamental, along with Salesforce, to kind of help organizations kind of triage and innovate where they might not have been able to before. So that's kind of my sense of where we are today. But I think we have a ways to go to understand exactly the full impact.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the rental car industry, and I've kind of dabbled in the auto industry across my career, different stops, but the rental car industry actually trickles down into a lot of other parts of our economy, really, and not just travel, but even car prices themselves. We've seen because when you lose that source, then it changes the pricing all the way down the line. So if you go to buy a used Toyota Camry today, you're going to pay more for it than you did a year ago. So it's been interesting to watch that. And I know something else that you're really passionate about is this concept of this fourth industrial revolution and its effect on business. And that was something fairly new to me. Can you define that, this fourth industrial revolution, for our audience and talk about what it means to businesses today?
Yeah, if you think back over the last few decades, that would be the span of my career in technology. We've been largely siloed, and that worked, for the most part throughout the years. You think of Autotrader.com, obviously industry leader for many years. But the Cox Automotive, where I was, is just an example that you can apply to the rest of the world. We didn't have a strategy to think of as an enterprise. So operationally, we were very siloed. We didn't really cross-share, kind of work across the different work streams and operational units. And that made it very challenging when this new era is kind of set upon us, which is being largely referred to as the fourth industrial revolution, which is there's kind of a perfect storm of technology advances like AI, IoT. Consumers expect all experiences from wherever they are, whether it's a iWatch or if it's an iPad, mobile device. We have SaaS, big data. So we're talking about exponential growth in terms of the different types of expectations that consumers have, but also all the different technology trends and how quickly they're advancing. So when we remained operationally siloed, we realized, and this is my experience working with customers of all sizes and all industries, that there's a real recognition that we have to transform. We have to transform our organizations because we simply cannot keep up with the level of demand that that perfect storm puts on our organizations and have even a remote chance of being successful. If you think about if you don't open up, you don't figure out a way to connect all these different all your systems to all these different experiences to deliver what your customers expect today, whether they be B2B or B2C, you'll start to fail. So the fourth industrial revolution represents, this era where we've got to figure out the best way to connect all these different, technology advances and make the most, use of them to meet expectations of consumers today. So, okay, that's how I see it. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity for IT to kind of change things up. I mean, what new opportunities does that this revolution provide for IT?
Yeah, so right now, because the nature of everything's been siloed and largely just kind of operated that way for so long, we need to bust down those silos. We need to connect different systems so that we can actually meet the demands that there are today, like IoT and AI, et cetera. So the integration space, API management, API design space is of significant importance here. So that's why, for example, Apisero, we focus on solely MuleSoft in terms of as a partner, and that's because we see it as industry leader, like many do, including Gartner, to basically work within this era to help all customers, all people, all industries bridge these gaps and make those connections, create those integrations, and help deliver at the end all these different experiences at speed, regardless of how many consumer demands there are in the business.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you, Lee. I love that. It's revolutionary. So love the concepts there. It's been a lot of fun talking with you about that. We're going to wrap the show up, but I'm going to give you one last question we love to end all of our Tech Champion show with, and that is, what's one characteristic it takes to become a Tech Champion?
I'll say two, if you don't mind. So perseverance and empathy. Sure. Perseverance because, whether you're a software engineer, you're an architect, you're a delivery manager, director, it's a challenging field, right? So you're always learning, you're always being challenged, so you have to persevere through all of those. Empathy, I think it's something that helps you relate to those that you're building business capabilities for. You're creating solutions for your end users, your consumers. Really understand what it is that they truly need to do. What it is they need to do. So I would take those two, and if you have those both, you'll be successful.
All right, perseverance and empathy. I love that. That's great. So we'll wrap things up, but Lee, if people want to reach out to you, find out more about what you guys are up to, we're at Apisero, what's the best way for them to find you?
You can add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with folks there. Probably be the best way. We can connect there for sure.
All right, great. Well, thanks again, Lee, for being on the show. It's been a pleasure. And to our audience, thanks for joining Tech Champions, and we'll see you next time.